What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Book is entitled Lessons from a Non-Custodial Father at Amazon, Kindle, and Create Space. Link will be in the description box below as usual. Go get it. PayPal link there also. They asked me to put it up, so I put it up. Thanks everybody for supporting. This video is entitled You Shouldn't Have Blamed the Men Who Weren't There. When it comes to fatherlessness and households and marriage and relationships, y'all really didn't. Some of y'all been blaming men so much on here that I don't think y'all paid attention to what y'all did. And this is what I mean. When you say these situations wouldn't end like this if a man was around, a lot of the times what happens prior to that is the situation was a complete utter failure because a man wasn't there. Now, some of y'all don't realize that some of y'all have contradicted yourselves because some of you took a stance that you knew in the past you said you didn't need a man around or you didn't want a man around. And then you turn around and say this situation would have actually worked out well if a man was around. So basically, you don't handle your adult business correctly. So it's a man's fault because if a man was around, he would have actually handled your adult business better than you. The same thing goes when we talk about fatherlessness, right? These kids wouldn't act like this if their father was around. So in some ways, you gotta understand, you're basically saying that these kids act like this because I'm around. Because when you say they act like this, normally it's talking about their lack of a moral compass or their lack of manners or etiquette, or just being considerate and good human beings. And you're like, well, if their father's around, they would act a whole lot better. But the problem is, it can be taken that they're acting like you're raising them, and then saying if their father was around, they would be raised properly. And the guys are just sitting here like, so you're gonna blame this on the men? Okay. So it's men's fault that all these situations end terribly because the men aren't around. But so if the men was around, they would make sure these things wouldn't happen because in essence you're saying men have a better moral compass than you. The men in you, and the reason I'm saying that is because part of the issue is you can't go around saying where are the good men and then say this situation would have been better if men was around. So that means you knew the good men, they left, and the life that you chose to take or the direction that you was going didn't work out because you weren't good. So now what? So now it's their fault because they didn't save you from yourself. They didn't save you from the way that you parented. They didn't save you from the way that you used, you manipulated situations and they didn't end out the way you hoped. So what you're saying is these men actually are more ethical than you. They have a better moral compass than you, because part of the issue that keeps arising is the aspects of morality. Because when you talk about, when you have these conversations like, nothing is off limits. There is no boundary that won't be crossed with some of you ladies who say this stuff. Oh, I was lying, but that ain't a big deal. Oh, I was stealing. Oh, that ain't a big deal. I was using people. Oh, that ain't a big deal. You know, I was playing games with people. Oh, that ain't a big deal. You know, I was setting people up to get jammed up. Oh, that ain't a big deal. But if a man was around, those things wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have done that. See, being a good human being has nothing to do with gender. And this, and the more y'all say this stuff, the more people look at it like, oh, they're going to associate the female gender with immorality. You know, and that's becoming a problem because more and more people are looking at it as projection. Like, okay, you keep saying these men are this, but when we look at the situation, it's not the men doing this. The men aren't around to do this. The men aren't around having these kids in this situation. As a matter of fact, you know, as you see people age and get older, you're hearing more people talk about how function, like when they were, you're hearing more people talk about the dysfunction in their household with their moms than ever before. You're hearing about the bad habits that they learned from their mothers more than ever before. You're hearing about the abuse and the bad treatment. So when you turn around and say, you know, this wouldn't have happened if the men were there. From the same kind of people that would like to call the cops on men, that would take men to court to get, you know, sole custody. Not sole custody, but a custodial custody, basically. You know, the same people who would, you know, file for divorce and then play all these games to make sure the kids don't have a good relationship. And you know, and this becomes a problem because now this lack of morality isn't traced back to the men because you say the men weren't there. But when you say the men weren't there, as I'm reiterating, when you're saying that they're not there and they're deadbeats for not being there, or they just shouldn't have never left, or they should have been man enough to stay, you're also saying that, you know, you taught all of the negative behaviors, because the negativity that you want to be fixed in the family, in the household, and in the community is all negativity that you lived in and participated in on a daily basis for the majority of the year, each year. You never had enough of it. You never got sick and tired of lying. You never got tired of using people. You never got tired of manipulating. You never got tired of hustling people. You never got tired of taking people's kindness for weakness and trying to get over on them. You never got tired of teaching that to your children. You know, thus, you know, the people who go to church to hope they're forgiven. You don't need to be forgiven if you're doing the right thing in the first place. So the reason I'm saying is, like, y'all got to be careful blaming all this stuff on men, because, you know, when people hold a spotlight and ask questions about what are you doing and what have you been doing, the answer, when you're doing things that are out of line and out of pocket, the answer is so nonchalant, like, that's what I can do. Like, a lot of you ladies who talk like this, y'all don't realize how evil y'all actually sound when all bad deeds are on the table and it's okay. You know, everything you did that was out of line is just on the table, and there's no remorse from you. There's no thinking that you were wrong for doing it. And then sometimes there are not other women that say, you shouldn't have did that. That's not right. It's just like, well, she's a woman, so she could do all wrong, and because there's a man should fix it. And this is part of, and then in part of the things that I'm about to say when I end this, is it reiterates the fact that these guys were actually the good people, and they decided to walk away from a bad person. It's not the other way around. You get what I'm saying? So I'm done. Like, share, subscribe. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.